Hello and welcome to our Stop Writing. Make that. Okay, start again. Welcome to our Stop Wishing, Start Writing community. Tonight, we get to talk about this fabulous book. I hope you have enjoyed it as much as I have. I pulled a bunch of questions out from this. So I've got a little story to set up the book, Twyla Tharp's The Creative Habit. And then I get to hear your favorite quote or your favorite passage. And then I thought it would be wonderful to talk through some of the questions that she poses in the book. She calls them your creative autobiography. And it talks about what's the best idea that you've ever had and what's the most successful creative project you've ever had. And who are the artists that you admire? And do you have a muse? Fascinating questions, all in alignment with what we explore here in our community. So we'll get to those questions in a second. First, let's set up a great story about how I discovered this book. Many of you know that 6 years ago, I pretty much gave away 95% of what I owned and headed out on my year by the water. And part of it was to live more creatively. I realized that I was on an aircraft carrier, and as much as I loved my business and my life, I'd been doing pretty much the same thing for the last 25 years. And if we believe, as Helen Keller said, that life is supposed to be an adventure, then why not now instead of someday? So I was driving through Texas, and I will always remember because I had decided that I was not going to take Route 10 or go through El Paso ever again, that I would just come to an intersection and whatever went west, I would take it. Well, as a result, everything I saw was new. I was intensely alive because everything I was experiencing was fresh for the first time. So I was filled in this state of wonder. Now, many people think of Texas as flat, dry, and barren, but I was in hill country and this was in spring. So there were these rolling green hills. And because I was on these blue highways, there was no one around. I had this whole countryside to myself. It was just exquisite. And I came up over a rise and I gasped out loud. There, spread in front of me and on all sides to the horizon, were these golden fields. And I pulled over and I parked under a lone tree and I got out. The only sound I could hear was a slight breeze through the leaves of the tree. And as I gazed out on that golden splendor, it was one of the most connected moments of my life. And if you're thinking connected, there was no one else there. Yeah, but there was a presence there. Nature was there. And I believe that we can be connected with places as much as we can be connected with people. We can be connected with ideas. We can be connected with experiences. And when I got back on the car, guess what? I was listening to Twyla Tharp's Creative Habit. And she talks about the importance of Virginia Woolf's quote about having a room of your own. And I laughed out loud because I thought, I've got a road of my own. And then as I drove, and it was this exquisite experience of listening to this woman talk about creativity and what a gift it is in our life. And are we honoring it? And are we keeping it present in our life on a daily basis? And she talks about every project needs a spine. What's yours? Have you ever thought about that, whether you're writing a blog or whether you're writing a book or whether you're writing a post? Does it have a spine? What does that mean to you? You know, to me, it means it has a point and a purpose and a premise that it hangs on. That's the skeleton of that creative work. The spine is what holds it together. It's what keeps it aligned. It's what is at the center of it all. So when we're writing and when we're creating, maybe that's a question to ask ourselves, is that does this creative project, does this book or blog or post, does it have a spine, a premise, a point, a purpose? And what is that? Because if it doesn't have a spine, chances are it's going to feel all over the map. when it has a spine, it holds it together. And that's when people get the purpose or the point of it, and it heightens its impact. So there's a little preliminary story about that great book. And now here's my favorite quote from the book, and then I can't wait to hear yours. My favorite quote from the book is, if you're at a dead end, take a deep breath, stamp your foot, and shout, begin. You never know where it will take you. Isn't that a lovely, that's the essence of creativity, isn't it? Is that in a way, there are no dead ends. That if we come to an impasse, if the words won't come, if for some reason we're not in that exquisite state of flow, take a deep breath, stamp our foot, shout, begin, and it is going to kickstart something. May not be what we planned. It may be a new direction. It may be a different way of explaining something or describing something. It could be a different point altogether. That powerful word, begin. So over to you. I can't wait to hear what's your favorite quote from the book. And if it's not a quote, an idea that really resonated with you, that for you lit you up. So let's see. Catherine, we're going to start with you today. What was a favorite quote or insight from Twyla Tharp's book, The Creative Habit?
Well, I liked the begin thing too that you just read. And the other thing, so that was one major thing for me, and the scratching chapter, where you're going out and finding a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this and stirring it all together and see what you can come up with, all that kind of stuff. And then as I was reading that chapter, I was also thinking, well, you know, I'm really good at scratching, but sometimes now putting it all together and making it be something till the end, now there's another thing to do with what you've scratched up with.
You know, and so tell me what scratching means to you. Does it mean like the thread sticking out of the carpet and you dig a little bit deeper, or you explore it or ask questions about it? What does scratching mean to you?
Well, I think it's just when you have an idea and then other things come along and you're working with that idea, and then something else comes along, and then as you're working with it, it just starts talking to you until you are creating whatever it is you are creating. So I've experienced it with writing. I've experienced it with quilting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, good. Wonderful. Farrah, how about you? Was there a quote or an insight from the book that really resonated with you? And that may mean that that you are present and listening and occupied in another way. So Mason, I'm going to come back to you.
Sure. There are so many things in the book, but one that really stood out is the chapter in A in Failure. And I'll read it. It's 2 sentences. Private failures are the first drafts that get tossed in the wastebasket, the sketches crumpled on the floor, the manuscripts that stay in the drawer. They are the not so good ideas you reject en route to finding the one that clicks. So the idea that an A in failure, boy, we don't usually think that way, that failure has its positives. And part of my book, I talk about trailblazing. And trailblazing is a willingness to fail and be criticized for it, knowing that you'll get further the next time. So that one resonated with me, among others.
Mm-hmm. Well, how about one of those others? It's what's another idea that really stood out that captured your attention or interest?
You know, I realized reading right there in the beginning, the part about having a habit, a routine, a rhythm for your morning. And yes, I have one, but it really changes day to day. I don't do the same things every day before getting started. So the idea that maybe I should focus, get something, and then as Twyla says I believe says in the book, that taking the cab to the gym, that was the end of that routine. So it was the cab ride, if I remember it correctly. That was the end. Everything that led up to it contributed to the routine, but then she knew, okay, now her day was starting.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that was another one.
Isn't it's, I mean, she called the book The Creative Habit, and I saw her
Yeah.
interviewed one time, and she talked about the title and her deliberate, intentional selection of all the things she could have talked about the book. Because, of course, as a dancer, she understands that dancing is a discipline and a habit, that there are days, you don't feel like dancing. There are days your feet are bleeding. There are days, and that you dance anyway. And that she really aligned dancing with creativity. She felt that it's not just something you do when you're in the mood. And it's not just you get an idea and you run with it, and that's creative. That it is a discipline like dancing. And that if we, as you just said, if we do it at the beginning of the day, then it is the lead domino for that day. that it literally and figuratively puts it front and center of our life. So it's not something we do when we have free time, or when our work is done, that we really put it at the beginning of a morning, so that it is top of mind for the rest of the day. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Catherine, how about your thoughts about this, the idea of creativity as a habit?
I think it's really important. And that was something that, of course, I read at the beginning of the book. I'm glad you brought it up, Mason, because while you can have a morning habit, and sometimes things happen though. So I was thinking, what about having something to get you into the habit if you have to start at a different time of the day, something that makes sure that you get done what you want, even though maybe you have, I don't know, different work responsibilities or whatever on different days. So how can I have this trigger that starts me when I'm starting at different points in the day, not just in the morning?
Mm-hmm. Does the name Pavlov ring a bell?
Yeah.
That, by the way, what you've just identified is that all of our authors at Maui Writers Conference, you've heard before that they didn't agree on much. They did agree on ink it when you think it. And the second thing they agreed upon was the importance of having rituals. Whatever your ritual is, whether it's Danielle Steele still writes on yellow lined notebooks, and she gets her pencils together. She gets a cup of tea. She goes over she writes in a chair. She doesn't write in a writing desk. And the sun, her cat's there. And those are Pavlovian rituals that she does every time, that drops her into that state of, it's writing time. I think I might have mentioned Dave Barry, the Pulitzer Prize winning humorist, is a real extrovert. And he said, he used to work for a newspaper, and, when he was at Miami Herald or whatever it was, but, it's noisy. There are people, etc. You're working on deadline. And he got very accustomed to feeding off the energy of the room, of that very animated space. He would riff off the energy in the room. Well, then when he was no longer working for the newspaper, when he started just writing his own books and his own columns, he'd be at home. And he's an extrovert, and it's quiet. And it was like, he said that the cursor would mock him. It's like, you're never gonna write. And so he found a deli in, a few blocks away, and he got a table in back. And when it was time to write, he would go and he would sit in the back, and they would welcome him, and he would have an extended lunch over hours, and people didn't bother him. But there was enough activity in that, is his third place, where there was energy. He could riff off, but no one interrupted him. So he almost had a cocoon of concentration, but that ritual of going to that place became very Pavlovian for him. Yeah. So Mason, you have any habits that kickstart your ritual?
Well, one is real simple: make the bed in the morning. It's and I think I'm trying to remember who it was. There was a military officer whose, I guess, speech to a graduating class ended up becoming a book, but that was one of the things he says: start with that, get something accomplished before the rest of your day starts. It can be simple as we think making a bed. Really, that's going to get me going. So after hearing that, I thought, that's actually pretty interesting, just and easy enough.
See the irony of this, because who could imagine you're going to write a whole book around that? But of course, it's a metaphor. It's a tip of the iceberg idea, right? And what, of course, was behind that idea was just what you said, Mason, about it seems so simple. However, what my dad used to say is just because something is common knowledge doesn't mean it's common practice, right? So, okay, well, I get to ask some great questions from the book here. It's what is the best idea? And by the way, Farah, anyone else on the call, if you would just like to listen in, you've had a long day and you want to kind of hear this like a podcast and not participate, absolutely. Feel free to do that. If you do have a comment, question, a contribution, please let us know. Let Kendra know she's looking at chat, and we welcome that, whatever works best for you. So here is, what is the best idea you've ever had? Okay. Who's going to go first? Best idea you've ever had?
The best idea I ever had is the one that I finished.
Mm-hmm. Is the one you finished. Tell me what you mean by that.
Well, you can have a great idea and you can start and you can get somewhere with it. And then the next best idea comes along and it isn't that seductive. And you start and you get going. And, you know, if that always happens, but you don't ever finish one, what have you got to show except a bunch of starts?
Hey, Catherine, I hope you write about that. Peter Mayle, M-A-Y-L-E, was asked for his best piece of advice about writing a book. And he said one word: finish. But that is such a wonderful, you know, tell this story. Is that I was part of a book club the other night, and one of the questions from Twyla Tharp's fantastic book, The Creative Habit, was, what's the best idea you've ever had? And it was crystal clear to me. I said the one I finished. And then remember to hook and hinge at the end, right? We've talked about the way to make our story someone else's story is to ask like 3 you questions at the end. So what is a great idea you had? Did you finish it? If so, did that make it even more satisfying, or did you not complete it? And is that kind of still hanging around? How's that make you feel? That'd be a great post. Great.
Okay, I'll make that post.
Good. Hey, Mason. All right. Now wait a minute. Is this Mason whose book just won an award or something? Best book of the year? Come on, tell all.
It wasn't an award. I'm on a list with Kirkus Reviews for one of the best books of 2021. Thank you.
I think that's an award.
Yes, it's certainly an honor, and I'm appreciative of everybody who's helped. It's a long road, but yeah, it was nice getting that and saying, wow, this is now a different level. It's not friends or family or people saying, hey, you really did a good job on that. And then you wonder what they think when they leave. It's somebody who I've never met, and I don't even know the name of the reviewer, who basically left a review that was fairly positive. And that in itself was great. Here it is a couple months later to hear that I've been selected among, I think it's less than, I'm going to say less than 300 books, because they break it down by genre. So you can have young adult, you can have fiction, nonfiction, business. I'm in the indie category. Mm-hmm. So it was nice. Thank you.
Congratulations.
And also thank you. You were there from the beginning.
Well, you are an ongoing example of, we never know what our pebble in the pond is going to create as a ripple effect or catalyze. We just know it will. It'll set things in motion, right? So congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Okay, best idea you ever had?
Proposing to my wife. Does that count?
Of course
I think it should. I'd like to say that, there was a lot of planning and I thought about it and I had the location, but it wasn't. It was, this is really good. It was unexpected. So unexpected that when I asked her, she said, wait a second, can you repeat that? So, and it's 31 years later, and that's clearly led to a lot more fun than writing a book. Let's leave it at that.
Isn't I'm sure that if we unpack this, we would talk about what criteria, because of, what's the best idea, right? Best is a pejorative word, so I guess of the things that have gone through my mind while I'm listening to your examples, I'm thinking that the best idea I ever had was the Tung Fu book. And I'm analyzing or judging it by impact, because little could I have known that it would still be selling 30 years after it was first published. That I get, you can't make this stuff up. I go online and I have emails from people in Saudi Arabia and Russia and Turkey and Poland and Korea, about how this has changed their relationship. And the stories I hear about the difference that is made. So when I think of global impact and the power of getting a book out of our head and into the world, and the long game that we cannot predict, all we can do is just be grateful for it, I guess that would be my best idea. Okay, go more questions. All right, let's just go with this. She asked him, so what is the dumbest idea we ever had? Okay, dumbest idea. And the follow-up question is, well, she has several follow-up questions. One is, what made it stupid? And second is, can you connect the dots that led you to that idea? Was it impulsive? Were we being pressured? Were we chasing, something, something false, that took us off a path or something? So who's going to go with the dumbest idea you ever had?
Well, I guess I can start because Catherine, you were put on the spot first last time. So, thinking of the subject of the impact that we have, and you're going back to Tung Fu. By the way, I've got 2 copies still here, and I can't tell you how many I've given away to friends. So, but we met years ago, you and I, back in your Reston days, when the whole concept of this chutzpah or constructive chutzpah was already on paper. And I had a number of them, I called them the chutzpah rules at the time. So this is going back probably, I'm going to say 12 years ago, maybe longer, maybe 15, I'm not sure. And after meeting with you, I kind of felt like, wow, I am 90% of the way there. I should start writing this. And the dumbest idea was putting it off because other things got in the way, or I found excuses to put it off because writing is challenging. So that would be the dumbest. I try and think of where would I be now? What kind of impact might I have had if I actually had done this back then, instead of doing a string of different things that just created a someday approach. Another wonderful book, of course, you've probably heard of. So that I'd say was the dumbest. And I tell my kids now, if there's something important, don't think of it down the road. Do it now. And I don't like telling them they should do something, but I've been talking to my daughter about get your network going on LinkedIn. You have a tool that I didn't have when I was your age that enables you to stay in touch and learn and educate yourself and share with others. Get that network going now, because it will undoubtedly be of value to you. So.
Well, you're 100% right about that. It's and I'm going to run with something, and then Catherine will hear about maybe an idea that didn't work out so well for you. Is that when I think about my life, I really don't have many regrets. Even things that didn't work out in a way worked out and benefited me in ways I couldn't have predicted and so forth. One thing though, if I could have a do-over, I had a client way back when I lived in Maui who was into real estate, and he had a lot of Maui condos. And I lived in Kihei Wailea. And so he had a whole bunch of condos there in these buildings right on, Cam 1, Cam 2, Cam 3 beaches that he was selling for like $48,000, $60,000. And he said, Sam, I'll give you a good deal on it if you want to get one. Well, at the time, these properties were kind of empty, they were not worth. And so I said, thanks and no thanks. Well, now you can't even, my son went back to Maui and he said, Mom, I can't find a hotel room for less than $300 a night. It's often 100% booked, you can't, and all of those little condos that were going for $38,000 to $60,000, now they're almost all worth $1 million. And it's not because they're worth $1 million, it's just because that's the going price. But yeah, I kind of wish that I'd said yes to him way back when. So, okay, Catherine, a stupid idea.
Well, I'm trying to think I can't think back far enough. The stupidest idea I did last week was I lifted too hard of a weight doing this hammer hop or wood chopper thing too early in the morning. And so then I felt some low back stuff, and then I felt some tightness here and had some dizziness, which I think is dissipating now, and I'm back to normal. But it was just too much for my body at the time. And that's the stupidest idea I can think of that's that keeps popping in my mind.
So 90-second story. And obviously I'm not a chiropractor, a physician, or anything like that. It's just that, so Peggy Cappy, who is PBS's most profitable fundraiser, even more than Deepak Chopra, even more than Wayne Dyer, etc. She created Yoga for the Rest of Us. And so I was at an event one time with Peggy, and the guy who was running it thought he was doing us a favor by putting us right up front. But this is one of those places that there's like 40 seats, and it's like we're right up front in the middle and we can't get up for the entire morning. And I was aware that I was kind of sitting weirdly, but I didn't think about it until finally lunch came, and I got up and I walked very gingerly outside, and I turned to Peggy, and I'm not an alarmist, but I said, Peggy, I don't know what's happening, but I feel at risk. And she said, what are you feeling? And I said, I just feel compression. I feel like something's really seriously wrong. And she pulled me over, and there was like a bench in the hall. And she said, lie down on your back and put your legs up on the bench. And I said, right in the middle of the hall? She said, right in the middle of the hall. And so I laid on my back and put my legs up, and gravity aligns the spine, right? It very gently gave the spine an opportunity. Whatever was out of whack just was able to come back in. And I will always be grateful for her. Have you tried that by any chance?
Well,
very gently?
I tried the one where you put your legs to one side and you twist your neck to the other side, and that's the one that made me dizzy. I had just done some upper back stuff, but it's dissipating. It's going away. I won't be doing too heavy weights again.
Okay. All right. Let's go on to another one of her great questions. Which artist? Well, she said artist, plural. For our time tonight, let's keep it singular. Which artist do you admire most, and why? And I'm going to kickstart this because I just wrote about it today, is that today is National Entrepreneurs Day. And I had an opportunity to see this interview with Lin-Manuel Miranda of Hamilton. And he was asked where he gets all of his ideas. And he said, make what's missing. Is that profound? And Mason, I saw your comment on the post, and it just made me think that entrepreneurs are not just business owners. Entrepreneurs just innovate a new way, a different way to do things. And how we do that is exactly what Lin-Manuel did. I remember sitting in the third row at the Richard Rogers Theater, having a chance to see, and I had not read reviews. It was early in its run, so I wasn't aware of it. Someone just invited me to go. And I just remember the entire time being completely immersed and absorbed and in a state of awe at the original brilliance and genius of that show. And he is a master at making what's missing. So I admire him. And by the way, if you haven't seen In the Heights, it's worth seeing it. And once again, just for his creativity, There's a number in the middle of it where he goes to a very famous big public swimming pool in Brooklyn, and it's based around the song 96,000. And there, it's like the old Lester Williams with synchronized swimming and drumming and drone shots and hundreds of people all doing this like dance act in the water at this historical place. The imagination of thinking that up, of making that happen, of filming it and capturing it, just it's 3-4 minutes of absolute brilliance. So I admire Lin-Manuel Miranda. Okay, so is it Mason, your turn?
I can go. Let's see. Boy, I can think of favorite author. I can think of theater. I'll go with Billy Joel, who, by the way, I think Twyla Tharp also did his play on Broadway, if I remember correctly.
Yeah.
Back, it was at a good time. I was in college. He was just really making some impression in the music world, and did 2 shows at our little college, well, Queens College in New York. I was on the concert committee, so I was able to attend when he and the band were at one point just hanging out, and I found him to be very easy to talk to. He was funny, he was irreverent, he didn't take himself too seriously. This, of course, was before the drug days. So I got him at that stage, saw him in the other stage, and then also afterwards. But so Billy Joel, I admired, I still do. And his ability to keep a crowd going and appreciate, he seems to have an appreciation for what he gives to the audience, what they get from him, and feels like it's an obligation to give his best when he does a live show. So I admire that.
What a wonderful tribute to him. Catherine, how about you?
I'll pick Richard Peck. He writes Fairweather and anyway, he's a writer. He writes, these are tween books, I guess, and he always has interesting women in his books, and he always tells a really good story. And so he's just an author that I admire, and I like the books, and so I think sometimes I want to write like that.
Richard Peck, P-E-C-K?
Yes.
Okay, excellent, good. And if you were going to recommend one of his books to start off with, what would that be, please?
Fairweather. It's
Fairweather.
a good one.
Okay, good.
The other one I can't remember right now, but if I do, I'll write it in the chat.
All right. So, and one of the themes throughout Twyla Tharp's book, The Creative Habit, is the importance of dreaming, of having a dream, working towards a dream, having a dream that calls you and inspires you and keeps you going through the discipline and the days that you don't want to get up and perform or expend effort or whatever. And so her question is, what is your greatest dream? And because this is our Stop Wishing, Start Writing community, what is your biggest dream as an author or as a writer? Okay, Mason, you're up.
Okay. As an author or a writer, I certainly want to believe, or like you spoke about Tung Fu and hearing from people 30 years later from different countries. To know that I'm having that kind of impact on people. And I've been hearing some very nice things from people saying, you made me do something I never thought I could do. I left a job. I know I've written, when I talk about chutzpah, I had something in there about basically abuse within a family, and how walking away, making the decision to leave that is very much an act of chutzpah, very constructive for you. It's not about being arrogant. It's not about even thinking about building a business. It's about having the courage, making the decision, handling the objections in your mind, and that others are saying, oh, it's okay, things will change, he's having a bad time, whatever. No, there's certain things you have to do. So the type of impact you're having, that would be a very big dream, to know that I'm reaching people with my ideas as for a model that could hopefully improve their lives, both at home and at work.
Good. Catherine.
I need to write my first book and then go publish it. So there's my dream. And then speak about it.
You know, Catherine, you're doing that with the post that you did that you're posting. I just see you putting your work out there, and it's like, do you feel momentum? Do you feel that you do it and then you want to do it again? And do you feel that it's leading to you doing it more and more?
I think so. I rewrote that post and posted it, but I don't think Facebook let anybody see it really. It's on my post. But so anyway, and I need to go do that in LinkedIn as well. But yeah, I think that gets momentum when I've done that.
Okay. And I want to hold myself accountable. It's that this has been a little bit of a busy week. So I made a promise to you that I would share both your posts, and I do not think I have done that yet. So, and I have seen your post, and Mason, if you'll let me know, because you wrote about veterans, I think, and you wrote about your award with Kirkus Reviews. So if you'll let me know which post you would like me to share, then I will keep my word, and I will do that. Because you never know, it gets out there and it gets some fresh eyes and gets some people who are not aware of your work so far, and they decide to follow you or share it, and it sets things in motion.
Okay.
So I will be glad to do that.
Well, I can tell you right now, if you'd like, go with the newer one, the one about the award, the Kirkus Review.
Okay, good. And do you prefer LinkedIn or Facebook?
LinkedIn is where I think
LinkedIn.
more of my followers are.
Okay. Catherine, do you have an answer right now?
I don't, but I'll tell you tomorrow because that'll be a week. I'll post the one I did on LinkedIn. So maybe, I don't know how many followers I have on LinkedIn or Facebook. I'm where his daughter is. I need to build up my network.
Okay, well, if you then please reach out to me, like on the Facebook community, and I will see it, or Kendra will see it, and then we'll make that happen. Okay.
Okay, sounds good.
Alrighty. And Mason, I already heard from you. It's the Kirkus Review on LinkedIn. Okay, so I'll share that. Okay. And you know, my greatest dream, and then, gee, we're almost out of time. I'm going to share a few more of her questions. And by the way, we're going to put the whole list up on our Facebook community, because I think she has like 50 questions. And man, if you're going out for restaurants these days, to take this list with someone you care about and to go out and just talk through these, it's a guaranteed fascinating, eye-opening, inspiring conversation about the creative habit and how we can bring it into our life now, not later. So my dream, I guess my dream is for my next book and for my books to have a Dale Carnegie impact. You know, Dale Carnegie's books, of course, How to Make Friends and Influence People, still going 65 years after he published it. It is as relevant today as when he first wrote it. And so I think you know that I'm doing Tung Fu 2. It's going to come out next year. We're playing with the title. It's either going to be Talking on Eggshells or Never Yell at a Barking Dog. We'll see what the publisher has to say. It's just that the tone of this book, yes, it's going to share some of the techniques from the first book. When people complain, don't explain, take the A train, and words to lose and words to use. However, it really is going to be also just as importantly about us choosing to be a Dalai Lama and a Desmond Tutu. I think I'd shared the story about having a chance to see the movie Mission Joy. And Desmond Tutu is given an 80th birthday party at a Tibetan school where, just like the Dalai Lama, these children have been exiled from their country in order to get an education. And they have a Q&A, and a young woman gets up and starts talking about how much she misses her family. And she breaks down and she is unable to continue. And Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who I guess is called Arch, looks at her with just this heartfelt compassion, and he says, "I am so sorry." And Dalai Lama looks at her, and I'm paraphrasing here because it's dark and I didn't write it down. He says something about choosing to stand strong and to be grateful for this opportunity to get an education and to use it to spread her message. And at the moment, the Dalai Lama's response seems a little aloof, a little abrupt. However, then Douglas Adams, who is the interviewer and the producer of the movie, says something really profound. He says that Desmond Tutu gave her words of comfort, and the Dalai Lama gave her words of courage. We need both, don't we? We need words of comfort and words of courage. And what I hope is that this book gives how in tense times, challenging times, sensitive times, we can give words of comfort so that people feel seen and heard and understood and that someone cares. And I also hope it gives words of courage that they're proactive and they lead us to a better future and they hold us accountable for taking action on making things better. And if this book resonates with people, and it's a big dream, and if it's still around 10, 20, 30 years from now or more, well, wouldn't that be wonderful? So that's a big dream. Okay, a few other, as we sign off for tonight, it is, who is your muse? Ooh, boy. I think we have to answer that one before we go. It's such an important one. Who is your muse? And then, by the way, she follows it up with other questions. Define muse. What does muse mean to you? How's this muse impacted you? So quickie, Mason, who's your muse?
It's not really the easy solution, but I'm gonna choose my children because especially as I was writing or my first book, and then they were older for the second one, seeing their ability to find fun in almost anything, to enjoy the things we shared with them, to value the family time. It was, and I'm using muse as inspiration. Inspired me to, for example, do things to make them laugh, right? Because that became a tradition with us. To write, even the first book. Very quickly, I remember the first book, which I'd written before, I think, it was before I met you. It was called Entree Marketing, is for restaurants. But I remember my daughter was in the second grade, and I learned that she had taken the book into class every single day for the year because she was waiting for every opportunity to show and tell, even if she'd shown it the week before, So it's easy to be inspired when that's happening.
Yay, kids. Yay. Yeah. Catherine, how about you?
Who is my muse? I don't know. Sometimes it's my kids. I also have a good friend that I study jazz with, but I share some of the stuff I write with him, poems and stuff like that. And he always gives good feedback and reads it. So that's a person I've gotten ideas from too.
Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's the new in nature. It is. It's why I get the New York Times every Sunday, because I never read that without reading, thinking, being introduced to something that my brain riffs off. CBS Sunday Morning. When I walk out in nature, I listen to Rich Rawl podcast, and his guests are fascinating. So for me, it's hearing new insights, and especially in nature, then I get to play with them and explore them and riff off them and run with them. And it's sublime. So thank you to the new and nature. So, and thanks to you for being part of our book club at the Stop Wishing, Start Writing community. And next week, we have our member showcase and our Ask Sam Anything. I look forward to seeing you then. And we will put those questions up in our Facebook community so you and a pal can go out and have a fantastic meal while you're exploring these very thought-provoking questions. Hope you have a great week. Until next week, right on.
Thank you, Sam.
Thank
Bye-bye,
you.
Catherine.
Bye,
Mhm.
Mason and Sam.